All across the unknown world, rediscovery pushes ever onwards to find the lands and people lost. All thanks to our brave explorers.
Hi, I'm Dan, and I'm playing Vanya the Wolfkin Warrior.
Hey, I'm Livy. I'm going to be playing Rayri, the Sprite Ranger.
Hi, my name's Theo, and I'm playing Cal, the Sangavar Guardian.
I'm Georgia, and I will be playing Elfric Stormhawk, a Dragon Scent Bard.
And my name is DM Dan. I'll be the GM in these adventures. The further we go, the more we learn of these magical tales from elsewhere. Hello, and welcome back everyone to Explorers of Elsewhere's Tales from Elsewhere. Hi, I'm DM Dan, and I return with 4 schmoozers in the upper echelons of society. We rejoin our Explorers +1 as we go wandering around the magical mansion of the Archmage Ulick, who's invited some people to a gala celebration dinner type thing, because his protege has recently come back from a daring and dangerous adventure. Whilst we're waiting for the final guest to arrive, our explorers have been given the opportunity to have a little wander around the mansion, and they have taken the opportunity to explore the trophy room. As you step in, as the doors opens, the obnoxious glitter of gold gilding strikes your eyes. Marble plinths and pedestals ringed with gold display dozens of artifacts from years of adventuring. Wands, medals, crowns, skulls. The wall is adorned with the mounts of a dozen strange horned or tusked creatures, and one particularly large fish skeleton. Each object is labelled with a small description of exactly where the trophy came from and how it was won. There are 4 plinths that are more noticeable, like more prominent, more eye-catching than the others. And we'll call them 1, 2, 3, 4 in case you want to have a little look. But Rayri, as you were the one to kind of shepherd everyone in, what, like as you look around this trophy room, what is it that, what are you looking at? You've got a little bit of time to kill before this final guest arrives.
Rayri's taking it all in the candy shop.
Yeah.
And would I want to go see the is it a tiny skull on that plinth? On your yeah.
Yes, there is a flicky. There is There is. It's actually, it's not a skull per se. It is an amulet laid on its back with a skull. It's a skull with its kind of jaw open as if it's talking. But you notice that the jaw itself within the amulet is actually hinged. So right now it's not quite closed, but you get the feeling if you were to pick it up, this jaw would just kind of like swing freely through the amulet itself.
How high are the plinths?
They are irritatingly Lorivar height. So like for everyone else but you're all just kind of like looking at the the stuff in the room normally. But Ravi, you have to like proper tiptoes.
I'm going to regret this, but Cal will offer to pick you up. In a very dad-like way. But only because he can then stand enough away that you can't touch it.
Okay.
As you pick Riri up, she's like, "Do you think it's a pest?" And just as she's trying to touch it.
Probably.
Deep sigh.
Maybe not.
You
Truly is dad.
So as you heft up Riri, Cal, you have a look at the small plaque on this plinth, on this small plinth, and it says the skull of Giergo. Using and then in sort of like in a little kind of parchment, like handwritten parchment slip, like you might see at say a museum, a curated museum of sorts. You presume this to be the handwriting of Ulick. Wielding this amulet giveth the user profound abilities to impose suggestions upon others.
Not cursed. Not good. Let's not touch that.
Sounds pretty good to me.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
What's Vanya looking at?
So Vanya is also in this sort of matching the excitement vibe, like going up to kind of ignoring the pedestals for a minute to go up to the beasties on the wall and looking at the big like the biggest one and be like, "Really? Look at this one! It is huge. So I wonder what this beastie is."
Are you looking at the largest one that still has like flesh, or are you looking at the ginormous fish skeleton? And when I say fish skeleton, I'm picturing it as like, when people mount fish on plaques, but it's enormous. It's enormous. Like those those singing fish, but it's the love child of those singing fish on the plaque and the T-Rex skeletons from the end of the first Jurassic Park film. Like, it's enormous.
I mean,
you could lose Riri in it. Enormous.
I mean, I was definitely aiming at the blue-headed, like dinosaur-looking dragon thing head, but I didn't realise that was a big giant skeleton at the top.
Well, there are also horned and tusked creatures. So yeah, there's this creature that you're looking at. It's got a crown of horns, like a thick, scaly hide. There's a part of you, perhaps it sits a bit uncomfortably, that it looks somewhat draconic in nature. So to mount like if it were draconic in nature and this mage's slain it and then mounted its head on a wall, that would be borderline heresy for a start. So perhaps it just looks like a dragon. You hope, maybe. Either that or the cojones on this mage are so great that he doesn't give a shit.
I'm guessing a bunch of these creatures, I'm assuming, are things that I've probably not seen before. So Vanya is more thinking of, now I wonder if this was alive and I hunted it myself. What kind of meat would I get from it? I probably could make a really good stew out of that.
Yeah.
Or maybe some skewers, perhaps.
It looks like the cheeks are particularly kind of meaty and chonky. You suspect that the bite of this creature would have been utterly, utterly savage, but all of that sort of like work has just really kind of... You catch yourself slightly salivating at this the thought of this dead creature's cheek flesh.
If only I could just find one in real life myself. I might be able to make something really tasty.
Makes notes.
don't want to fight it.
This is how we die, Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah,
No, it's future dinner.
Both Dans. Both
You-
of you. Just
the other like creature head that you notice that catches your attention. It's a curious thing. It looks that the shape of its head is similar to that of a horse, but it's smaller, and the fur is coarser, kind of shaggier. It's grey. The face is flatter, actually. Like, the snout isn't as long as a horse's. But interestingly, it's got these two kind of big curved horns that kind of jut out the side of its head and like curl down. And you can tell from the jaw structure that perhaps it was a herbivore. Like, it looks like it had big back chomping teeth. But yeah, these really kind of big, long, curving horns. You wager that if you were rammed by this thing, it would really hurt. But then you wonder if it is a prey creature, because you notice that it's got 6 eyes to look sideways, forwards, and up. So it makes you ponder, because prey creatures tend to look sideways. Predator creatures tend to look forward, but this one looks in all axes.
And you're doing that meme with like bats.
Yeah, like. Yeah, it's just. I've never seen such a creature before.
What's Alfric looking at?
I think Alfric is looking at his new friends as they sort of bustle in around this horde. He's still quite starstruck. I fancy this must seem pittance to the hordes you've seen in your time.
I mean, we as a group haven't had much chance to really have too many adventures together yet. So I can't speak for everyone, but I have hunted some good things in my time, and when we get chance, I might be able to whip up a good meal from one of those catches one day for you.
That sounds quite fantastic. You haven't seen much the outside.
And Vanya is now like studying you over, and your reaction is like, why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself? You not gone that much? Not explored around your home? I hear you're a musician. Is that where your passion lies?
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm not allowed out very often, but I hope to change that. I've always wanted to be what you are, really. And
well,
sure
you should be an explorer of elsewhere then. I'm sure with enough experience, you could make an explorer out of you yet.
Just looks at you with these big, big eyes.
Oh, and for the nerves, and I pick out some like random, like you see, as Vanya's had this like big coat, it slightly parts, and you can see the more rugged outfit underneath, and his abs showing. And there's a little bag on his side that, when he flips open, like bits of frost comes out, and he pulls out this jerky.
Sorry, I've just dawned on me that this coat you're wearing is just giving me real strong, like, 80s pimp coat vibes.
You want to see my collection?
You want some jerky?
Perfectly greased abs.
Yeah, Vanya pulls out a piece of mystery meat jerky and is like, here, for your nerves.
Is it that obvious?
It will help you, trust me. Chew on this. It make you work through that feeling.
He takes the mystery meat.
Just imagine just me and Cal are just watching.
It's like, yeah,
What he
you
does.
just turn around, just watching, like, oh no, he's at it again with the mystery meat. Not again.
Do you chomp down on the mystery meat?
He takes a very polite bite.
It is pretty much jerky, but it has a slight exotic taste to it, but not much because it's hidden underneath the salt and peppery flavors. It's actually a pretty darn tasty bit of jerky. As I'm now, because of that, you get 3 hope.
Yay!
Missy.
Oh,
And I do too, as I use my Soldier's Bond feature once per long rest.
as the two of you chow down on goblin
Thank
jerky.
you very much.
Just to explain for those who don't know the feature, once per long rest, if you compliment someone or ask them about something they're good at, you may both take 3 hope. But I've also agreed with them. Part of my whole cooking roleplay here is trying to get, cook things for people, have a bit more substance to this feature.
As long as you don't vom, you get your 3 hope.
Yeah. So yeah, you please take 3 hope, and so do I.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So Alfric and Vanier are up to 5 hope, and us plebeians are still down on 2. Very good. Well, as you kind of bite into this, kind of tough, chewy, but he's right. It's very well seasoned, very strongly seasoned. Alfric, as you kind of glance around these plinths, these small kind of display plinths, is there a particular one that catches your eye? And the answer can be 1, 2, or 3.
I will go for 2.
2. So yeah, you turn and look at the plinth next to you. The plaque says spell render, and sort of like underneath the protective kind of like glass lid, display lid that's under, you see a very ornate, quite viciously curved looking dagger, with a number of small kind of black gems studded in the blade, like from the hilt end, starting slightly larger and then getting smaller as they move up towards the point of the dagger. Spell render. A vicious weapon to use upon other magic users. Hath certainly decided a few arguments in mine time.
How very friendly.
Cal and Rayri. Cal, you've got Rayri under your arm. Is there anything in particular that you're doing or looking at?
Pointing to the next one.
The next one.
Cal will just very quietly obey and go to the next plinth.
Sure. Tell you what. 1 or 2, left or right. 1.
Ah. Sorry.
Well, Rayri's looking right, and you take her left. So this plinth has the plaque. Curiously, the plinth is empty, like there's nothing on it, but it says the Wilder Shard. And the handwritten description is a powerful foci of a primal nature. Twas recovered from a temple of heathens, and the subject of many a lengthy study. But you notice the little kind of display cushion is empty.
Is it invisible? Is it being invisible?
Could be. Probably not, though.
Are they in glass plinths, or are they just a
Yeah, so thinking about it, they've got the glass cake lids. Yeah. But yeah, this one's empty.
Oh.
There's no
Maybe
lid.
it's being
There's actually no lid. There's no lid on this one. The others there are. But this one, there's no lid, it's just the cushion. But the cushion's empty.
Maybe people are looking at it, studying it.
And let go on. Like, I've been egging you on. 4 for 4. Who's looking at the last plinth?
Oh, Vanya.
Yep. As everyone else is sort of dispersed to other areas, Fanny will just turn around and see what it is.
You see on the final plinth a jet black iron circlet. And as you look at it, it catches your eye because you just kind of get the feeling that it's made of metal, but it doesn't seem to reflect light very well at all. Like, you wouldn't even say that the metal is tarnished, because you'd see the light would catch on the imperfections and the damage of a tarnished surface. Now, this just seems to be... It just doesn't seem to reflect light particularly well. The plinth, the little plaque says, "Do not touch." As an aside, also, if anyone would like to be rolling dice for things, because we might go through this whole adventure without ever rolling a dice. But yeah, if you want to do like knowledge styley checks, by all means, just pipe up and we'll have a look.
Well, I just turn around instantly and be like, this one only says do not touch. Doesn't say any fancy things like the other ones do. I wonder why.
Perhaps it's his favourite.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to roll, please, DM. I would like to use... I don't think I'll use like a hope or anything, but I'm curious to see if any of these artifacts or relics have been used or discussed during the war.
Interesting. Okay, so like a history...
Yeah,
of
like
sorts.
a history check, really.
Okay, so that's going to be a knowledge check, methinks.
I has no knowledge, but let's find out. Be a straight roll.
Okay.
So, so that's 12 with fear.
With hope.
No, 12 with hope.
12 with hope.
Sorry. 12 with hope.
12 with hope. Okay, so you go up to 3 hope. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, 12 with hope. And you're just trying to see if you've heard of any.
If there's anything that, like any of these artifacts that strike me as something that I might have been heard of that's been used or recovered or anything like that within the war.
Sure. Well,
with the war background.
Looking at it, you look at the spell render, the dagger, and certainly during the war, their like anti-mage weaponry would have been in like quite high demand, simply because of the powerful spellcasters that were dominating the war, especially towards the end. Is it a little bit weird for a mage to have one in his abode? You don't know. Like, it's whether or not it's did it belong to him? Was it a trophy that he took from an enemy mage? Like, you don't know. But yeah, it's being like, it would be like the Wicked Witch of the West having a swimming pool at home. Like, it's just a bit weird. You back for 12. You also glance at the Wilder Shard plaque, and the fact that it's supposed to be like a natural focus of primal magic. So you would immediately know that therefore this artifact must be relatively new, given that the phenomena of primal magics, born of the world spirits, is approximately 18 months old. They didn't really, they literally weren't around before then. So yeah, that's clearly like the newest edition. So yeah, perhaps it's getting kind of tidied up or kind of display prepped or whatnot. But yeah, it's also curious that presumably an arcane user, you presume this mage will be an arcane user, so yeah, to have a primal focus, it seems like the description on the handwritten description seems to be like it was taken almost by force. So yeah, that makes you wonder how Ulick came into possession of it, much like Spellrender, I guess. The black iron circlet that says "Do not touch." Well, I mean, there's not much that you can intuit from that, but perhaps just savviness tells you that if you see a light absorbent black circlet with a sign that says "Do not touch" in a mage's trophy room, that might be pretty good reason for that.
Mildly cursed.
Yeah, it's not like going to be like the arcane thermostat or anything. Like it's probably some bad stuff. Bad juju, and certainly, and finally, the amulet. You tell me whether during the war Cal was ever subjected to enchantment magic. Because I think that will flavour how you feel about an amulet that seemingly lets you enchant people.
I get the feeling that that sort of magic makes Cal very uneasy.
Sure.
Like, I don't think he's a man that looks at ease when it comes to magic anyway, whether it's divine or arcane or primal.
Mm-hmm.
He has knowledge on it due to various reasons from his upbringing, but in terms of how he feels about it, it is very much a magic and I do not get on. We are not on the same wavelength. So I think if there was ever an occasion, which there probably was during the war, where he was subjected to magic, even very briefly, it's always made him feel a bit sick, I guess. So I don't think he, when he was saying to Rory, like, keeping away from that, I think that was like a genuine reaction of like, you're keeping away from that. Yeah, like, he is a believer that, there are better ways to convince or make people do what you want them to do than enchanting someone.
Yeah.
There's a talent in being like, Cal does not have that talent. He's not saying he can, but he personally believes if you want someone to do something, you prove to that person that, they are either the person to do it or convince them that you need them to help. Like, that's his shtick. So, yeah, it makes him feel uneasy.
Sure. In which case, as you kind of tussle with that uneasiness, the four of you hear a sort of like a commotion from the foyer, like behind you, and you notice that the other guests are beginning to move into the parlour. It would see if you realise 15 minutes has already been and gone, and Alfred, you certainly wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to see Stradivon playing.
He turns with a little excited gasp, and he's already on his way to the door.
In which case, yeah, as the four of you begin making your way out the trophy room to follow into the others, by all means, you can start moving your character tokens over. You head, like, as you enter into the parlour itself, it's a spacious living room, complete with chairs, large plush couches, and a massive rug woven in the image of a enormous brown furred bear. There are musical instruments and 4 large windows displaying a, admittedly fake, image of the outside world. A small beach of glittering sand and rolling waves on a brilliant blue sky. And as you enter, you see that a number of the other guests have already kind of taken their seats. The elderly Lorvar Lady Gwendolyn, is sat on a kind of a reclining chair. Agatha is sat on a regal-looking high-back chair near a fireplace at the far end. Mayor Montgomery has sat in an armchair near the door. And Stradivon is in the centre of the room. And as you walk in, Alfred, you notice that he's kind of manipulating little tuning pegs that are cleverly disguised as kind of rivets on the metal, the armour of his chest piece. And there's that kind of the standard tuning noises. Stradivon then kind of stands up straight and looks around the room and please be seated. The performance will begin momentarily. I'm just going to ask for a real quick, who's got the highest knowledge skill? So we know Cal's got 0. The rest of you are bozos, aren't you? Like Rayri and Vanya. 2 from Alfric. It must be a bit weird for you, Alfric, then, to see a statue dedicated to the hero Stradivon, like an Asavari hero of legend. Like, it's odd. The statue clearly isn't Stradivon. It's a statue dedicated to Stradivon. But the statue seemingly moves and acts as if they were Stradivon. As if they were this kind of ancient hero of lore. I might put you on the spot a little bit, but what would you say was the story of the greatest victory that Stradivon had that you read about?
Was Stradivon himself a bard?
Stradivon was an incredibly famous swordsman. Music did not play into his history.
I imagine there is a legend of him defeating an entire army, one-on-one combat. It's starting out, one person fighting the greatest warrior that the army has to defeating him, no problem, and then slowly working his way through the whole army until he gets to the leader, who he then challenged in one-armed combat, and the leader ran away.
Fair enough. Yes, and that in itself was indicative. It was proof of how incredible Asavar can become when they exhibit exemplary mastery over their path. And Stradivon's particular path is potentially up in, slightly in question, given how old it is, but perhaps his path was hero of legend. So as you all take a seat, Stradivon glances around the room and thank you for joining me, he says. Tonight will be a night of celebration, happiness and mirth. But we must always cast our minds back to those who are no longer here to celebrate with us. I would like to dedicate this song to the fallen of the Great War. And I would like for you all to join me in memory of them. And somewhat curiously, Alfric, Stradivon begins playing a dirge of sorts. A very solemn, droning dirge. It's perhaps a little bit difficult to say because the language is quite old, but it sounds like it's the lyrics are interspersed with Asavari prayers of the dead, asking the twin gods Ulavari to usher the spirits. Not Ulavari, Barahan, the soul guide, to usher the recently departed onto the afterlife, and to Ulavari to hasten the process of rebirth so that they may once again rejoin left behind family and friends. It certainly changes the feel of the gathering. Cal, you find yourself trying not to let your mind wander back to some of the more the events that you try your best perhaps to forget from a time all too recent. But as this dirge kind of carries on, it swells to a song of discovery and hope that in fact perhaps death is not the end, but the start of a journey to sit alongside the dragons for the rest of eternity, as the dragons safeguarded us in life, now as we pass on we may safeguard them in death. The song is interrupted by a jingling bell that the three of you, Cal, Rayri and Vanier, would have heard a couple of times tonight already, to indicate that someone has arrived at the tower. The song that Stradivon is playing, so he's fundamentally plucking at the strings in his chest like a harp. It's reverberating up through his chest cavity and out the pipes at the top. They come to a stop as he rests his fingers across the strings at the sound of the doorbell. And the door to the parlour opens, and the small doddery goblin butler, Bendel, shuffles back in. The Justica has recently arrived and is preparing herself to meet you, to join you. In the meantime, can I get you anything to drink? He says as he looks around the room.
Vanya immediately is like, do you have any ale or something?
The butler just slowly nods. We do.
A pint of that, please.
The goblin nods.
And for me as well, please.
Hey, good on you. You need to drink some good ale, and that'll make you a fine explorer.
I've never had an ale before.
You'll do just fine, don't you worry.
You watch Cal and Rayleigh, you watch the moustache of the goblin bristles, like, twitch slightly as this dragon says, like, oh, I've never had that before. 2 ales. And then he kind of goes around, he grabs the drink orders from the other guests. And as the goblin leaves, Stradivon's, fully stopped playing now. And from behind him, surging to his feet, Agathar stands up and, well, that's killed the mood slightly, Stradivon. We're all here to have a good time. Please take a seat. It's about time that we talk. We get down to the real brass tacks of why we're here. I know you've all been dying to hear about my journeys, and I don't want to deprive you of my tale any longer, he says, with a sort of like a hearty laugh. As he stands, he moves backwards towards the fireplace, and you notice that there are 4 more kind of plinths in this room. They're not kind of locked in place like they were in the trophy room. But there are clearly items on top of some of these plinths covered with like fabric drapes. And Agathar sort of like stops, and he strikes a pensive, like, thinking man's pose. As far as you could see, frozen peaks clawing at the sky like wild beasts. The bitter storms, they lashed at our faces. Not all of us who went on the expedition were strong enough to withstand their hoary touch. Deep into the caves we ventured, the walls encrusted feet deep with ice. There was no light. There was less light the further we went, until we were plunged into total darkness, accompanied by nothing but our bated, waiting breath. And then we saw it. We saw the glimmers in the darkness. We heard the sounds of their movement, and lo, we found them. Giants. A whole village of underground giants. Well, some that I travelled with did not have the courage, and they turned and fled at the sight, lost in the darkness, never to emerge from the tunnels. There were very few of us when we brought the battle to the giants themselves. It was a battle of titanic proportions. But, as you could well assume, we were victorious. I would not be able to tell you this tale if we were not. And from that village of giants, we brought spoils. Look, and he pulls the first kind of fabric drape off with a flourish, a dramatic flourish, and throws it into the corner of the room. And he points at this thick, circular, like metal band with like holes in it. And Cal, to look at it, it looks a bit like a really chunky, like metal breastplate. This may look like armor to you or I, but it was in fact just a ring worn by one of the giants. That's how large these beasts were, their fingers the size of men. Once we slew it, we were able to prise this piece of jewellery from its finger and put it to better use. And then the second drape comes up, and you see a large pearl the size of an apple. We found this as an earring on their queen. Could you believe it? They wore jewellery. Well, after we slew her, we seized it from her ear. She would have no use of it. But, funny story, the poor bugger that picked it up, before we knew what it was, completely blanked out, forgot everything that had happened in the past 10 minutes. Turns out that it can modify your memories. Perhaps that's why the giants weren't doing anything, because she was always forgetting what it was she was doing. What a fool. And he whips off the third drape. And you see a matching pair of, like, curved horns crisscrossed on the plinth. Carved out of a slightly off-white ivory and banded along their length with iron bands. They're your size, like normal size, and we're not entirely sure what the giants were doing with these. Perhaps they were using them as toothpicks. But no, we've discovered that if two people hold them to their ears, it allows them to communicate. I don't suspect for a moment that the giants even began to know that they had these magical items. But it's their loss, our gain. Well, my gain. I'll let all of that settle in. It's a lot of excitement to take in such a short amount of time. I wouldn't want to overwhelm you, much like those cowards that fled at first sight of the giants. But if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer anything you have to ask. Don't all rush at once now.
Gary's going to get up and just look straight at the breastplate-looking ring. Is it, once again, is it my height? Is it like eyeball height?
Yes. Yeah, these are lower. Yeah, you can see what's on them.
I can see what's on them. Can I roll with an experience?
What is it you're rolling?
So I have an experience as I used to work in a forge. So can I use that to ascertain if I think it really is a ring or it is used as a breastplate?
Sure.
Because as her parents were armorers,
Yes.
they would probably have an idea of what it would look like if it was made one way or the other.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're using the hope to roll with the experience here?
Please.
Yep. So down to 1.
What would you like me to roll with? Like,
I think I'd have to be. I'm wondering if it's knowledge because you're recalling, analysing, or comprehending.
Not my strong suit, but
You get the +2. You'll be fine.
You get the +2 on top, yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Okay. So, 14 with hope. So back up to 2. You know what? Because you rolled with hope, you tell me. Is it a breastplate that one of the giants went, oh, that fits? Or is it actually a giant's ring that, whilst it's got holes in handily the right places, would just make for a really awkward bit of armour?
I think Rory can ascertain that it probably previously was a breastplate that's been manipulated into.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
looking at it, she's just like looking at the where it's been constructed.
Yeah.
And she can see that it's definitely a breastplate, not a ring.
Okay.
But see how maybe it could be worn as a ring if they really wanted.
It also strikes you that it is a mundane breastplate. Like, it's not actually magical. The other two quite likely are magical.
Yeah.
In your experiences, really big gems and items that are with metal bands that come in pairs are, probably magical. But this just looks like, some poor schmuck had a breastplate, met a giant.
Yeah. Giant
ended up with a new ring. So, Agatha is looking around, seeing if there are any questions. But before, Ravi, you figure this out as you're peering at the breastplate. But before Agatha can be asked any questions, the door to the parlour is opened again, and the chef pops her head in to say, dinner is ready to be served. And she looks, and as she enters into the room, there's this beautiful aroma that wafts in behind her. Vanya, it's good enough that it makes you sort of turn and look, perhaps with your slightly heightened senses, but it does smell incredible. And Alfred, for example, as you turn around and look, given that she's got the elsewhere equivalent of a Michelin star on her chef's hat, you're not surprised. And as she kind of steps out the way, Bendel has come in, Bendel's followed in behind her, the goblin butler. I have placed your drinks in the dining room. Please follow me, he says. And as the other guests stand and follow behind Bendel and the chef in the slowest escort quest that you've ever experienced, as this goblin just shuffles along, inches of movement at a time. The two of them make their way into the dining room. The the goblin, Bendel, you understand, stands at one end. The chef stands by the door to the kitchen. And as you all start to filter in, you notice that this long room primarily dominated by this large copper-topped table. Well, the large copper-topped table catches your attention first, and then secondly, as you filter in, you notice that on the wall to your right, so the northern wall, you see a large portrait of who the explorers would assume is Ulick. Alfric, as you wander in, you know is Ulick. It doesn't look quite how you remember Ulick, him being quite an elderly Lorivar. But the painting is of what is clearly a mage, stood atop a rock in the midst of a battle. Luscious, flowing blonde beard, billowing in the wind, matching this beautiful these beautiful locks of golden hair that kind of radiate, and it looks borderline divine as he's sort of like looking off, like slightly off profile from the viewer, with a wand in each hand, lightning bolts flying off into the hordes surrounding him. And who would we say who's got at least a +1 in instinct? Rayri and Vanya. So as you look at this painting, and it looks bombastic. He looks surprisingly young in this painting as well, you notice. Like, as you're glancing around and kind of taking it all in, you notice it in the background of the portrait. Among the soldiers and the spells, you notice what seems to be like a collage of Ulick's achievements, like victories, including what appears to be a sunken city, a grand garden temple smouldering in flames, and a vast overgrown castle. But like, and as you kind of take this in, and you just kind of get the feeling that this Ulick is the absolute bee's knees. Please take your seats, says the old goblin butler. And as you do, and you're sort of like tucked in, and the chef starts walking around, placing out kind of, well, I'm doing the flick with the napkin to lay across your laps. Interestingly, you notice that there are enough seats for the three of you as well, Cal, Rayri and Vanier. So perhaps Ulick does know you're here? Question mark. Yeah, as you're all sat down, the first course begins to filter out. And Vanier, like, you start drooling as these beautifully prepared griffin ribs, smoked griffin ribs, on a bed of crown root battenets and silken greens comes out. And the texture is, the meat falls away from the bone, the texture of the greens is silken. And the goblin butler, as he promised, kind of brings out your drinks. Alfric, you're provided with an ale, as are you, Vanier. And like, as you're all kind of tucking in and enjoying this meal, you hear the door behind you open, and the goblin butler like slowly looks up and, our final guest has arrived. And in the doorway, like stooping to get through the doorway, steps a keeper. All 8 foot of her. like ridged horns rising from her forehead. Her hair is naturally kind of like twisted and curly. She wears a blue steel breastplate with kind of brass and silver detailing. Alfric is probably... Has Alfric got the highest knowledge?
Yes.
Yes, okay. In which case, yeah, Alfric, as you turn and look and regard this newcomer, there's a few things that catch your attention. First, that the regalia that she's wearing has a number of identifying features that mark her out as a paladin of some sort, but specifically a paladin of Tione, the architect. The greys, fundamentally the greys, give it away. But the rest of you also pick up, because perhaps this might not be as peculiar for Alfric, in that most keepers that you've met up until this point have had skin tones of sort of like greens, browns, like earthy tones, much like, say, a Terran sprite. But this keeper has a reddish hue to her skin. Her eyes are bright blue, like crystalline blue, similar to, crystalline in the same way that other keepers' eyes are. But her red hair, her red skin indicates that there's something slightly different about this particular keeper. And Cal, you noticed that whereas the keepers that you might have seen have a relatively hairless tail with a tuft at the end, the tail that swishes behind this keeper looks wolf or fox-like. It's furry, it's furred all the way from base to tip. As this paladin walks in, she's got her left arm kind of bent and held on some straps. It's clear that she's injured her arm recently. But as she steps in, the goblin says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Justica Valana." And the keeper nods to you all, being mindful to not bump her horns into the chandeliers that are floating overhead. Good evening, all. Please stay in your seats. There's no need to get up. As she looks around, she takes a seat in one of the empty seats, and sort of like quietly says her hellos to the other guests, and as she does, and like her meal is served up by the chef, the goblin continues. "Well then, now that we are in attendance, I will fetch the Archmage. Please excuse me." And he begins the painfully slow shuffle out of the room. And you see the keeper paladin sort of like pout sympathetically as he toddles out. How many keepers have you met, Alfric?
I imagine not a huge number of keepers.
Sure.
I don't think many visit my father's house in the middle of the city. I've probably seen one or two. I've certainly read about them.
Yes.
But this may be my first time properly meeting one up close. I think Alfric is entranced. Big heart eyes at this woman across the table.
Sure. I mean, she strikes a very bold, commanding silhouette. From your extended academia and reading, Alfric, you know that this keeper given how she looks, she presumably might hail from a deserty climate. You know that other keepers adapt to their natural surroundings, being slightly more in touch with elsewhere than the other lineages, the other people of elsewhere. But yeah, you can see that, like, as she steps in, her hooves look like they would handle like hot sandy ground better than the hooves of a more arboreal keeper, for example. Yeah, as you kind of take this all in, the mayor, Mr. Montgomery, the Terran sprite, turns to Valana and Valana, my dear, I'm so glad you could join us. I've had no time to thank you for helping out with that little vineyard dispute a few weeks ago. Truly appreciate it. And sincerely, the keeper responds, I'm happy to serve you and the lands. No thanks are needed. And then she turns to regard the four of you. Alfric, I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting you three.
Fine. Cal will obviously sense that he is the only adult in the group. Vanya is eating. Ray's probably just like, ooh. So Cal just said, my name is Cal. We are explorers of elsewhere. We're here to meet Ulick.
The Justicar nods and explorers. Well, it's been some time since we've seen explorers. We were fortunate enough, being that this town was fortunate enough to be discovered during the rediscovery. It's been a while since we've seen any of your folk. I hope that you're here on good tidings rather than ill. She looks down to the far end of the table and kind of raising her voice slightly. Agatha, I know you made your way back from the frozen north 2 moons ago. How fared your expedition? And the Wolfkin mage at the end sort of like, what? Like paying attention, kind of puffs his chest out. And as he goes to, like, Cal, you feel the throb in your forehead as you can sense that Agathar's about to go off on one. You hear a scream from somewhere in the manor, like behind you, towards the parlour, like towards the foyer, I should say. And there's a hurried shuffling, and then you watch as Bendel, the butler, rushes through the door and trips at the last moment and splays out, his cane clattering across the wooden floor. And he's gasping, and his tiny little eyes are as wide as they can be in horror. There's obviously a commotion around the table as everyone kind of stands. You see Valana immediately stand up to go pick this goblin up, as he sort of like, tries to catch his breath. But before she can get to him, the goblin looks to you all at the table and the Archmage is dead. As the other guests gasp around the table, you all watch as Alfric, you watch Lady Gwendolyn sat opposite you, just like she gasps, clutches a hand to her chest, and then faints and passes out, like drapes backwards, slumps onto the arm of Stradivon, who sort of like immediately kind of reaches out to grab her. And as the paladin stands up and sort of like looks to you all, and the goblin's kind of on his hands and knees looking up to you, just like with a sob catching in his throat. The Archmage is dead. And he looks at you all one in turn. Cal, you take a glance, and I suspect curse as that gut feeling you had going into the trophy room seems to have borne fruit. What are your immediate reactions?
There is a murderer in this house who has either been invited or not invited. So, Cal is, I think, one of the first things that he does, apart from curse, curse under his breath. He doesn't just shout the word very loudly, but he gets up. He, moves over probably straight to Bindle along with the Justicar. And strangely for Cal, because he doesn't seem to come across this way, he is quite tender as he talks to the goblin. It's like, what happened? What did you see? Tell me as much as you can.
In which case, as you ask the question and this goblin is looking at you, like his pupils dilated in shock. Like as you're crouching down talking to him, and you sense the presence of the Justicar coming around to kind of join you, as the rest of you kind of look around the room and wonder who or how this might have happened, who did this or how it might have happened. We'll call it there. What a surprise, hey? Who'd have thunk? Who'd have thunk?
See, I was hoping, because I hate the guy so much, that like we were going to eat, and then this, Agatha was like, I'm the best, so I should get to eat my soup first, and then he just goes, bleh! And then the cook set up, and then the cook's like, it wasn't me, I was framed, and then we had to go, it could have been that. And I was like, I hope so. It's both, because Cal thought he was a pain in the ass.
It was not. It was not. But no, as Nate has pointed out, there has been a murder in this house. And perhaps you will find yourselves embroiled in the mystery as to who it was. So, yes, congratulations. Welcome once again, Georgia, to the fold. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you for playing. Just real quick. Nate's in the chat, but I'm gonna shout out for him anyway. In just over a fortnight's time from today, PrideCafe is happening in Bristol, which is a comic and arts fair, kind of created for, by, with the LGBTQ plus community. Really, really amazing stuff. You should 100% check it out if you're in or around the Bristol area, because it's hella free, and the sheer quality of the art on display is amazing. There's talks as well by some sort of like really prolific members of the kind of art community. 100% give that a shout. And if you're there, say hello, because I'll hopefully be there as well. There's also something else that some of our players are doing. I just wanted to shine a little spotlight on.
Cool. So George and I are currently working on a audio fiction podcast, which is a horror, like a fan fiction horror podcast called The Homeward Foundation. And as we record this tomorrow, our teaser trailer gets released. So if that's your bag, please do check in tomorrow at some scary point in the day, where we'll be releasing all of our trailer stuff on social media. Georgia, would you like to add anything?
probably tell people where they can find us. You can find us at the Homewood Foundation, most social medias, and at www.thehomewoodfoundation.com. We post world-building extracts on our Tumblr, so Tumblr is a good place to be. We've just closed our casting call for our ensemble, but I'm sure we'll have other things coming up soon. And yes, tomorrow at some point we will be posting our trailer, which is very, very exciting.
Yes. We are super excited about it.
Very
Thank
good.
you for letting us do a shout out. Thank you very much.
You are more than welcome. Yeah, it sounds like a really exciting thing that you've got. So, yeah, looking forward to that. So, the other two, they haven't got anything going on. They're boring.
No.
So,
where do you get those maps from, Dan?
these maps are my own creation. Yes, it was a real quick jobby just to give you something all to look at. But yeah, works for that. If you enjoyed watching us bumble through a murder mystery, make sure to hit the like button. You know what? It'd be really good if we could have comments in the description, comments down below on who you think is a murderer straight off the bat. And then to find out if you're correct, it would be a really good idea to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications whenever we release new videos, because we've got loads and loads of stuff going out. We've got this happening, we've got Blades in the Dark Campaign 2 happening, we've got a Warhammer Old World one-shot rolling through, there's I'm going to be playing some Fallout London, which I'm a voice actor in, there's just so much, so you wouldn't want to miss out. Yeah, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for playing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll see you next time. Bye.